So we're going to watch a video clip about an innovative movement in green architecture, also known as sustainable architecture. Architects are finding all kinds of new ways to create environmentally friendly buildings. We talked a little about green architecture last time, so you know it's a popular approach to building design. The architect's goal in this kind of design is to minimize the impact that new construction has on our environment. That means using materials that the builders can get locally and also materials that require as little energy as possible. That's one reason local building supplies are important. It takes less energy to move them to the construction site. Also, the materials used in sustainable architecture should be renewable. That means using materials that are naturally replaced quickly, such as bamboo or wood from certain fast-growing trees. A sustainably designed building also utilizes as few resources as possible when people are in it. For example, the walls might be designed to help keep the air temperature inside cool when it's very hot outside. This means the building needs less electricity to run an air conditioning system inside the building. Another goal in green architecture is to reuse materials as much as possible. For example, an architect may use the byproducts of another industry as building material. A byproduct is something created in the process of creating something else. So let's look at an example of that. Very large metal shipping containers are utilized to send products all over the world. These containers are also the focus of a new model of sustainable architecture. In many places around the globe, designers and architects are transforming used shipping containers into homes. Some people might think of the containers as junk, just a byproduct of trade between countries. At the end of the video, the narrator says we might expect these to be ticky-tacky homes. The word ticky-tacky means something is made cheaply and with low-quality materials. On the contrary, these living spaces can be really modern and luxurious. And I think the home in the video looks really nice. So think about this question. Can you see yourself living in a home made from reused shipping containers? Let's watch this video clip now and we'll discuss your thoughts after.
Ian Felton is proud of his new digs.
I always have a real joy at the surprise on people's faces when they visit for the first time, and you know, they're like, wow.
It's not that the place is a nice modern living space or that it passes the location test perched beside the river. Ian Felton's apartment is a revelation because of what it's made out of. It's got all the comforts of home, and the view isn't bad either. But the important view here is from the outside in. This whole building is made out of what would otherwise be junk, out of shipping containers, and it may be part of the future. Look carefully. The entire building is actually a giant Lego set, a pile of blocks made out of the byproducts of modern trade. The shipping containers used to ferry goods around the world. The problem is the trade is mostly one way. Goods are shipped from the Far East to Europe and America. Sending empty containers back doesn't make sense. It's cheaper to make new ones.
To ship 40 feet of air would not be very
wrapped
sensible.
in a steel shell.
Exactly.
Not terribly sensible.
No. So more sensible to do what we're doing.
What Eric Reynolds is doing is recycling the containers into buildings, homes, schools, offices. Lie them on their sides, pile them up, stand them on edge, cut window shapes into them. It's a handy, quick, and cheap way to build.
Our aim was to find something that we could construct reliably to good standard, that we could rent to people at a low cost.
Several projects have already been built in London. There's a plan for one in New York and inquiries from other places, and satisfied customers who impress their friends.
They kind of assume, I guess, that I'm living in some kind of squat, you know, in some rusty old steel box. Then when they actually come into the space, as you can see, it's a lovely home.
Unlike the little boxes in the song, these aren't made of ticky-tacky, and they don't all look the same. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
So we're going to watch a video clip about an innovative movement in green architecture, also known as sustainable architecture. Architects are finding all kinds of new ways to create environmentally friendly buildings. We talked a little about green architecture last time, so you know it's a popular approach to building design. The architect's goal in this kind of design is to minimize the impact that new construction has on our environment. That means using materials that the builders can get locally and also materials that require as little energy as possible. That's one reason local building supplies are important. It takes less energy to move them to the construction site. Also, the materials used in sustainable architecture should be renewable. That means using materials that are naturally replaced quickly, such as bamboo or wood from certain fast-growing trees. A sustainably designed building also utilizes as few resources as possible when people are in it. For example, the walls might be designed to help keep the air temperature inside cool when it's very hot outside. This means the building needs less electricity to run an air conditioning system inside the building. Another goal in green architecture is to reuse materials as much as possible. For example, an architect may use the byproducts of another industry as building material. A byproduct is something created in the process of creating something else. So let's look at an example of that. Very large metal shipping containers are utilized to send products all over the world. These containers are also the focus of a new model of sustainable architecture. In many places around the globe, designers and architects are transforming used shipping containers into homes. Some people might think of the containers as junk, just a byproduct of trade between countries. At the end of the video, the narrator says we might expect these to be ticky-tacky homes. The word ticky-tacky means something is made cheaply and with low-quality materials. On the contrary, these living spaces can be really modern and luxurious. And I think the home in the video looks really nice. So think about this question. Can you see yourself living in a home made from reused shipping containers? Let's watch this video clip now and we'll discuss your thoughts after.
Ian Felton is proud of his new digs.
I always have a real joy at the surprise on people's faces when they visit for the first time, and you know, they're like, wow.
It's not that the place is a nice modern living space or that it passes the location test perched beside the river. Ian Felton's apartment is a revelation because of what it's made out of. It's got all the comforts of home, and the view isn't bad either. But the important view here is from the outside in. This whole building is made out of what would otherwise be junk, out of shipping containers, and it may be part of the future. Look carefully. The entire building is actually a giant Lego set, a pile of blocks made out of the byproducts of modern trade. The shipping containers used to ferry goods around the world. The problem is the trade is mostly one way. Goods are shipped from the Far East to Europe and America. Sending empty containers back doesn't make sense. It's cheaper to make new ones.
To ship 40 feet of air would not be very
wrapped
sensible.
in a steel shell.
Exactly.
That
Not
doesn't
terribly
make any
sensible.
sense.
No.
No.
So more sensible to do what we're doing.
What Eric Reynolds is doing is recycling the containers into buildings, homes, schools, offices. Lie them on their sides, pile them up, stand them on edge, cut window shapes into them. It's a handy, quick, and cheap way to build.
Our aim was to find something that we could construct reliably to good standard, that we could rent to people at a low cost.
Several projects have already been built in London. There's a plan for one in New York and inquiries from other places, and satisfied customers who impress their friends.
They kind of assume, I guess, that I'm living in some kind of squat, you know, in some rusty old steel box. Then when they actually come into the space, as you can see, it's a lovely home.
Unlike the little boxes in the song, these aren't made of ticky-tacky, and they don't all look the same. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
Okay, class. Today, to wrap up our city planning unit, we're going to be talking about the final 3 civil projects for our city square. We're in the final round of our Keep Our City Beautiful campaign for the city's 100-year anniversary, and we need to narrow these projects down to 1. So first, Let's review the basic plan for each project. Ready? The first one would prohibit cars from driving in the city square. Instead, the square would be made into a pedestrian-only zone, no cars or motorcycles, with art exhibits and food and beverage stands all around. The second project would add 2 small parks to the outside of the square. The final project would create a skate park for the young people of the area to use for skateboarding, inline skating, and other activities. As you discuss these 3 projects, remember that the city planner is listening to ideas from our group and others for her final design. So you can help her transform the way we use our old city square. You should really take this task seriously because you're helping to change the historic part of our town. Any questions? Okay. You've got 10 minutes to make your decisions.
Before we start, I think we should develop some criteria to help guide our decisions. For example, with my last group, we came up with 3 must-haves to help us make our decision.
Okay, what criteria should we use?
Well, in my opinion, whatever the project brings needs to be fun. I read an article where a researcher said cities with fun urban spaces have healthier residents.
Right, but it also needs to be practical. I don't think they should change the personality of our square too much. We've already seen the problems that inevitably happen with bad planning.
Like what?
Like when they place speakers around all the ponds to mimic the sounds of nature, for instance. Remember? It scared away all the ducks. We're still trying to get the poor little guys to come back.
So we want the project to be fun and practical. That's 2 criteria. I'd also like to add that the change should attract young people to the city center. The survey by the mayor's office showed that 75% of people ages 16 to 24 felt that they didn't have any good places to hang out in town. Those kinds of numbers suggest that we need to create a space for those people. So we're looking for something fun, practical, and draws young people. So let's talk about which project plans meet our criteria. So, closing the square off would encourage more people to walk around in the old square, and we could set up some stands and stuff, which might be fun, but it might not bring a significant amount of young people in. I mean, there are already lots of places to walk in town.
I agree. It would also be really inconvenient to have to drive around the square to get to the other side of town. I drive through that square at least twice a day.
Right, but eventually some roads are probably going to be closed off to cars. The chapter we read in our book last week said that there's a trend towards encouraging more walking in city centers. It's a health issue. It'll probably come up at some point.
Eventually, maybe, but it's not something I vote for right now. I just got my license. I love driving. Taking away my chance to drive in the city center wouldn't be practical or fun for me.
I agree. I was hoping we'd say no to the pedestrian walkway project. Besides, according to the mayor, we need something a bit more imaginative.
Well, what about the skate park idea?
Are you kidding? Those places are dangerous. A lot of the kids don't wear the right equipment. Who's going to be responsible for what happens there? Not the city.
That's true, but I read that skate parks have a lot of benefits for kids, like improved physical fitness and a place to hang out in a healthy environment.
That's an interesting point. I think the skate park idea might be our winner. The mayor's survey also showed that 6 out of 10 parents would like their children to be more active. A skate park would definitely create more activity options for younger people.
Right, but is it practical? I mean, are the kids really going to use it? What about the winter? I don't think they're going to hang out a lot outdoors then, so we'd only get those advantages for part of the year. And then there's the responsibility thing. Kids getting hurt would really be in contrast with the goals of this project, so I don't think the city would want to risk it.
True. Maybe this idea isn't practical or safe. What about the third idea? The one about the parks?
Well, the article we read last week argued that parks have 2 big benefits. First, they give people a place to be active and get together. They can walk, run, play games, stuff like that. The article also explains that parks enhance the lifestyle of city residents by giving them a place to be in nature. The journalist who wrote it, Richard Louv, argues that protecting our natural spaces in the country isn't enough. We have to create green spaces in the city as well. Project 3 does help to do that.
I like this park idea.
Yeah, people could also have picnics in the park.
So I'd say the park idea definitely meets the criterion of fun. And parks do attract young people. There are always a lot hanging out whenever I go to Pryor Park, so it meets both those criteria.
And the plan is practical. It would be easy to turn those empty lots to park space. For instance, you could roll out some sod, plant some fast-growing trees, and stick some shrubs and bushes in. Easy.
Okay, so are we deciding to vote for the parks?
Yeah. I think the park idea fits our criteria better than the other two ideas. It's fun, practical, and interesting to young people. According to the guidelines for the campaign, we need a plan that benefits every citizen in town. I think a park does that too.
Okay, sounds good. So the parks get our vote. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. The parks it is.
All right, class. So we're ready for the final vote.
So let's get back to talking about 3D printers. As I was saying, these machines may one day be able to make more 3D printers.
So they'd reproduce themselves? Sounds like a science fiction story.
Yeah, it does sound kind of unreal. But there's even more to it. Think about what you could do with a 3D scanner and a 3D printer. In the same way that you can scan documents to a computer, you can also scan objects to a 3D printer.
Wow, so if you scanned a phone, the printer could create the exact same phone?
Well, it probably wouldn't be a working phone yet, because a scanner wouldn't be able to scan the inner circuits. But yes, the technology is moving in that direction. Eventually, we could make a replica of that phone, an exact copy.
So I could scan a chair and make another chair?
Yes. And you'd also have an electronic copy of that chair. So you could make it again and again, send it to other people, or post it online.
Wow, that's hard to imagine.
Yeah, it's going to take time for people to get used to the possibilities. There are actually already programs that can turn smartphones into functional 3D scanners. You can use your phone to create electronic images of basically any object. Another area that will likely expand with 3D printers is customization. You know, making special products for particular needs. We'll no longer have to manufacture thousands of exactly the same product. In fact, conversely, we'll be able to make small changes to each electronic file to make a product just right for every customer.
So, I could special order my next computer keyboard to be designed exactly for my hands.
Yes, that's the right idea. Customize everything. A final advantage of 3D printers would be in something called collaboration and purchasing. Product designers can already use the internet to work closely with product makers virtually anywhere on Earth. With 3D printers, when the product is finished, a customer in yet another place could customize it exactly to their needs, then order it and get the electronic file for it in a few seconds. They would just print it out and use it. No waiting for delivery, no shipping, nothing. You've got it right now.
Amazing. I bet there's all sorts of uses for that.
There are. One of the most interesting applications is in the visual arts. Nowadays, artists are as interested as technical designers in using this type of technology. Let's talk a bit more about that. So, we're going to be talking about 3D printing today. I think it's a fascinating topic. Let's start by talking about what 3D printing is. You should have read this in your homework for today. Anyone? How about you, Mike?
Well, 3D printers are a kind of hardware. Basically, they're like regular printers since they work with electronic files, but these printers can take electronic design files and turn them into physical objects, like a ball, a statue, machine parts. So, with 3D printers, people can use computers to turn electronic designs into real physical things. What else? Oh, the 3D stands for three-dimensional. You know, length, width, and depth. Those measurements are what make the actual shape.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. So now, what do we mean when we talk about 3D electronic design files? What kinds of files can be used, and how do we make them? Can someone help us out? Okay, Sheila, tell us what you know about that.
Well, you can create 3D electronic files in a lot of ways. Some 3D files are made in a way similar to regular design files. You just use a CAD program to draw an object in 2 dimensions with lines and then change the design to 3D.
And CAD, or CAD, stands for?
Oh, it means computer-aided design.
Right. Yes, that's one way to make 3D designs. Design in 2D on a computer and then convert the file to 3D. How else can we make them?
Well, there are other programs too. Like you design in 3D and you build things from the bottom up. You know, like you're working with virtual building blocks.
Yes, good.
I also think there are some CAD programs where you can make a drawing on paper and then scan it and convert it to three-dimensional design.
Right. That's correct. There are lots of different methods for creating 3D designs, but basically they all have one thing in common. They allow the user to build an object digitally in a virtual 3D workspace. Now, CAD is nothing new. It's been around since the 80s. In fact, a lot of the things you have in your home probably spent some period of their development as a CAD drawing. Your phone, your TV, even your car. So the use of CAD is quite common. But the revolutionary thing nowadays is that we can make the design become an actual object in 3D. We can make something abstract into a real thing. Now designers can see how a product is really going to look, and from all angles. Unlike building design models by hand, which took a lot of time and a lot of money, this idea is simple. Now, a 3D printer can do it at the click of a button. Both methods work well, but a 3D printer can do the job much more cheaply and in less time. But now, let's think about it. How simple is it really? Does anyone know how these machines actually work? How do they make these three-dimensional objects? What do you remember from your reading?
It's not like traditional sculpture. With that, you chip away at a big block of stone or something, whereas with 3D printing, it's more like the object is built up. The process is called additive manufacturing. Instead of cutting away to make a shape, the machine actually adds layers of materials to make the object. So if you cut the object in half, you would see that it's made up of thousands of very thin layers. You can do it with lots of different materials. Metal, paper, stuff like that. My roommate got one for a design class. It uses plastic. It lays down layer after layer of plastic in different sizes until you get a shape. It's pretty cool.
Really? What kinds of things does your roommate make? Does she just make objects, or can she make things that work, like a lamp or something?
Well, she's never tried to make a lamp that's functional, but I don't think you can make things that really work yet. Could probably make a lamp shade or maybe the base. She's only been doing basic things like boxes and balls. But I heard these kinds of printers are now in the early stages of making circuitry that actually works. You know, electrical parts in a phone or a computer.
That's right. These printers are already able to make working devices with moving parts, like a pizza cutter with a moving wheel. Eventually, they should be able to create both the outer and inner workings of things. So a 3D printed bicycle would come off the printer ready to be ridden.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, now let's hear what everyone thought about that interview with Yasmin Aslam. Your assignment was to write a reaction to the interview. Ria, can you start? What was your reaction? Hey, class, feel free to jump in with your own thoughts.
Well, actually, I was surprised that video games had any positive qualities. I mean, my little brother still can't get those games out of his system. He's 22 and still plays them every day. My parents keep hoping against hope that he gets a job, but Oh, sorry. Back to viruses and video games. I think it's great that video games can simulate real-world problems. To think my brother and his games could help save someone's life.
Thanks, Ria. Did anyone else write something similar?
Yes, I wrote that good news can appear in the strangest places. You know that's how the medicine penicillin was discovered, right? The story is that Alexander Fleming didn't tidy his workspace. When he came back from vacation, penicillin was growing in some of his petri dishes. Furthermore, it was killing the bacteria that had been growing there. We have to keep our ears to the ground to find out where the next breakthrough will come from. 50 years from now, the World of Warcraft accident might be remembered for helping scientists get ahead of the game with vaccines. Anyway, the thing that I think was the most interesting from the talk is the virus spreading from rural to urban areas. We live in a heavily populated urban area.
You know, I wrote about how the UK has experienced outbreaks of disease. I have a cousin who lives there, and she told me about it. They had a problem with hoof and mouth disease. It affects farm animals mainly, cows, sheep. They thought they'd gotten rid of the disease, but it still persisted in Britain into the 21st century. When it cropped up again, public health officials enforced a strict quarantine. Even though it's very rare that humans contract hoof and mouth disease, officials there didn't take any chances. Animals raised for meat had to be destroyed. It's too bad about the animals, but it made me feel really relieved that the British government acted quickly. It kept my cousin safe, and maybe even people all over the world.
Let's make no bones about it. I also feel safe knowing there are qualified professionals protecting the public from disease. I want to become a public health official one day because I think research that improves human health is the most important work happening today. Did you hear about Bakul Das, the scientist who'd recently discovered where tuberculosis bacteria hides in the body? It's been a mystery for decades, but he found it. It hides in bone marrow. You know, the soft material in the middle of some bones. Now that we know where it is, we can develop medicines to treat it better. We can significantly lower the incidence of tuberculosis. Maybe even wipe it out completely.
Yeah, I'd heard about tuberculosis bacteria hiding in the bones. That's a really important discovery. Sometimes I feel like we should all go out and thank a scientist. In situations where people used to be on pins and needles, science is helping people feel more relaxed. Tuberculosis, for example. It's no longer a life or death situation in many places. Now it can be treated. The same goes for my penicillin example earlier. Bacteria can be a silent killer. Now we have tools to fight it. It all just reinforces the idea that we need to be prepared for the next big scientific advance to come from anywhere, maybe where we least expect it.
Thanks, Carrie, and thanks everyone for your contribution. Today, I'm going to be speaking about the trend of using viral videos as a marketing technique. Now, what exactly is a viral video? Actually, there's no specific definition. Sometimes people use the term viral to mean a popular video that's shared a lot with others. But there's more to it than extreme popularity. From a marketing point of view, the concept isn't really about the video itself at all. It's about that special quality of the video that makes people want to share it. That's what you need to make a video go viral and reach your market. But how do you find that special quality? Is there some way to capture it? Well, the short answer is we're not really sure. So let me explain why. Nowadays, everyday people are attaining global popularity with their own short film clips. Think about the guy who dances in famous places around the world. You've all seen him, right? Or a video of a crazy moment in a sports game. Someone's probably shared something like that with you as well. All just for fun, right? Well, not always. What you need to remember here is that the interest in these videos is not only about content. The act of sharing the video also makes a statement about both the sharer and the receiver. Because of this, there's a sense of identity that goes along with video shares. The sharer wants to be seen as a cool person with good taste, the one who's found a great video before anyone else. The sharer then forwards the video to people he or she feels also have good taste. It's today's new method of connecting with others, sharing the experience of watching the video and comparing opinions. And this is one reason it's so difficult to use viral videos as a marketing tool. We don't know yet how to consistently create a video that a lot of people will want to share. That's what advertisers want to figure out. Now let's talk about the history of the viral video. In the early years, from around 2000 to 2006, most viral videos were things that got filmed accidentally. Videos about funny animals or embarrassing moments caught on camera. Next came the more organized approach to going viral. People shot their own music videos, homemade films, and personal commentaries, for example, to capture other people's interest. And there was the emergence of artists who edited existing video clips to make new videos called compilations. It was these purposefully viral videos that made marketing professionals aware of a huge media opportunity. Viral video as a marketing tool. That's when more and more brands started to look at what was happening on video sharing sites such as YouTube. Companies realized that with a few funny videos, they could reach the same number of people as their larger, much more expensive advertising campaigns did. So even the biggest brands started filming quick clips in the style of a home video. They used the internet instead of more traditional media, such as TV and magazines. Brand names such as Evian Bottled Water and the body scent Old Spice did hundreds of short, funny videos to get people's attention. The notion that interesting content was more important than a particular product was not a new idea in advertising. But the new question for marketers became, how do we make viral video content interesting for everyone? Well, this question is one of the main challenges in viral video marketing. We all know how quickly these videos can spread, but we can't really assign any rules about what'll be popular. I mean, who would have thought that a bunch of roller skating babies would become one of the biggest internet hits ever? Apparently, Evian did. But how did they know? Some video producers now actually specialize in creating viral videos. They focus on creating 3-minute stories. These experts have a couple of key strategies for creating videos that viewers want to share. One is to include a character that people identify with and relate to. They capture the customer's attention and loyalty with a video series or a web channel that people want to watch regularly. Another key point is to be funny faster. According to marketing research, people don't want to wait to find out what makes a video worth watching. Since the viewers want immediate satisfaction, the punchline or interesting part has to come quickly, usually within the first few seconds of viewing. The problem is, other than these hints, there still isn't much information about how to make successful viral videos for marketing. This leads us to a bigger debate. Is viral video an appropriate marketing choice? Are we capable of mastering the style? Or will marketers simply keep saying, hey, this might work, or let's try this? We really won't have the answer to that for a few years, although statistics do show viral video ads are becoming more popular. In 2012, audiences watched 150 video advertisements per second. That's incredible news for marketers. So what we're seeing right now is a transition from viral video being a trend to becoming a useful medium for marketing, public relations, and who knows what else. YouTube has changed the media world, and it's still changing. No one really knows what's going to happen when it reaches its full potential. But when it does, it's going to be something very, very powerful. Now, does anyone have any questions or comments about what we've been discussing today?
Since the dawn of man, we have looked up and wondered about the mysteries of outer space. We still know little about it, and we know even less about inner space, the space inside our heads. You are looking at the most sophisticated computational information processing system ever made. It is lightning fast, clever, adaptive, and can often tell if something is wrong with it. In fact, there are as many neurons within this boy's brain as there are stars in the galaxy he is currently viewing. But the universe inside his head, and yours, and mine, is still so vast and so unexplored that we can barely understand how a 3-pound human brain knows how to pick up a glass of water and drink it. The mysterious human brain. We know enough to know we've only just begun to understand the basics. We're not clueless, though. We do know a few things, and those things I like to call brain rules. It's extraordinary what some of our brains can do. Go ahead and multiply the number 8,388,628 times 2 in your head. Can you do that in a few seconds? Probably not. There's a young man who can double that number 24 times in the space of a few seconds. He gets it right every time. There's a boy who can tell you the precise time of day at any moment, even in his sleep. There's a girl who can correctly determine the exact dimensions of an object 20 feet away. Yet none of these kids could be taught to tie their shoes. Indeed, none of them have an IQ greater than 50. Your brain may not be nearly so odd, but it is no less extraordinary. My goal is to introduce to you 12 things we know about how that extraordinary brain works. The brain rules cover such topics as exercise, memory, stress, sleep, vision. The supporting research for each of my brain rules must first be published in a peer-reviewed journal and then successfully replicated. The problem is that so much of what we do in our modern world ignores these brain rules. We try to drive while talking on our cell phones, even though it is literally impossible for our brains to multitask when it comes to paying attention. We have created high-stress office environments, even though a stressed brain is significantly less productive. Our schools are designed so that most real learning has to occur at home. That could be funny if it weren't so harmful. Let's find out why.
We devised a whole load of games involving skills like problem solving that exercise the frontal lobes, memory that stretch the temporal lobes, and math that use the parietal lobes.
You guys generally think that the brain training has improved your brains?
Yes.
Okay, who's keen to find out what the scientific results of this study were?
Yes.
Me too. Liz?
Okay, it's time for the moment of truth. Now, we already know brain training games make you better at those games, but do they improve your brain power like some of the commercial games imply? Thank you to all of you in our studio and at home who took part. We could not have done this without you. First up, let's look at the control group that did no brain training at all, but they did spend time on the computer searching the internet. Now, our scoreboard represents roughly the range of scores for all our participants. Let's look at their mental ability at the beginning of the 6 weeks.
This is how they scored on our tests of memory and problem solving.
There it goes. Excellent. So that's the score they got before the 6 weeks. Average score of 4.6. And this is how the control group did after the 6 weeks.
Now, in theory, there shouldn't be much difference.
There we go. Ooh, right. Our test gave them a score of 4.8. So not much of a change there. Remember, that's the result of our control group. So far, so good. But now for the interesting bit. Does brain training have any effect on your overall mental abilities? Brain trainers, let's see how you did before brain training, shall we? There it goes. Our tests of memory and problem solving gave you an average score of 4.6. Exactly the same as our control group. But how did you score afterwards? Did brain training make any difference? 6 weeks, remember, of brain training, thousands of you across the nation. Did you do any better than our control group? Are you ready to find out? Let's find out. Ooh. Where's it going to stop? Ooh. That's almost the same as our control group. Can you believe it? Our test gave you, our brain trainers, an average score of 4.9. Are you shocked and horrified? How are you feeling about this? Yes. Adrian, can I ask you to join me? I am frankly quite surprised by the results. Okay, so we've got 4.8 from our control group, 4.9 from our brain trainers, so it's 0.1 of a difference. Does that mean anything?
Well, unfortunately, when we do the direct comparison between the brain trainers and the controls, the difference is statistically completely meaningless. There is no difference between them.
Okay, but what about the difference between the brain trainers pre and the brain trainers post-training? So you've got 4.6 to 4.9. Does that mean anything?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappoint you again, Liz. That difference is so small, again, it's statistically not meaningful.
Can we actually say that brain training games don't work?
The result is crystal clear. Brain training is only as good as spending 6 weeks using the internet. There was no meaningful difference between the two groups.
Pretty surprising stuff, I'm sure you'll agree. Adrian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much for joining us on the Business Roundtable. I'm David King, and I'll be facilitating today's discussion about franchises. Joining me are 3 franchise owners who have agreed to share their experiences. We have Paul, Jennifer, and Todd, and we hope that you, our viewers, may learn from their successes.
And our mistakes.
Right. There are many routes to success, aren't there? But as long as you get back up and try again, you haven't failed. What do you think about that, Paul?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you should never give up. Success is just around the corner. You just have to make it there.
Indeed. And I'm sure that's why our viewers are tuning in. They want to hear what you all have to say about this topic. Do you mind if we start with you, Paul?
Oh, sure, no problem. I'm Paul Gallagher, and I own a restaurant franchise. 5 of them, actually. I was 32 when I first got interested in owning my own business. I was tired of working for someone else. I wanted to make my own hours. But I didn't have an adequate sum of money to build a brand new business. So I decided to open a restaurant franchise. It took a year to make a profit and another year to become really successful. We became really popular after we added a few ethnic food items to the menu. So one lesson, I guess, would be to try something new and see if customers respond. Luckily, our customers did.
Thanks, Paul. Let's hear from someone else. Jennifer, what about you? Why did you open a franchise?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I run an automobile service franchise, and I got interested in owning a business because I thought I could make more money with a franchise than at my old job. As Paul said, it's a lot of work. I'm surprised I didn't collapse. During the first few years, I worked 14-hour days. I had to manage my shop, advertise, train new employees, and make connections with other local businesses. But the hard work was worth it because my 3 auto service shops are very successful.
Paul, Todd, what do you think about what Jennifer said? Is time the most important factor when deciding to open a franchise?
Well, I think so. No one's going to do it for you. You have to make your franchise your top priority. After your nuclear family, it gets all of your time. But money's also important. I invested a lot of my own money into my franchise. No one's really going to give you the money to start your business. There are a few grants available, but they aren't adequate. And I found that even those small grants were hard to get.
Would you like to comment on that, Todd? You received a large grant to open a franchise, right?
Thank you. Yes, I did receive a grant. I found out about it in a trade publication I was reading. A man started a waste disposal business in the city next to mine, and it became so successful, he wanted to branch out in the region. So he set up a grant. Basically, he would pay for the first year of operation for anyone willing to open up a branch of his business in a nearby city. I applied, and because of my business background, he selected me. I've been running my branch of his waste disposal company for 7 years now, and we started making a profit after 3 years. So there are grants out there. I'm proof. They are rare, though. As Paul said, most franchise owners have to invest their own money.
What have been the biggest challenges for each of you running a franchise?
For me, honestly, it was getting people to take me seriously. People weren't used to seeing someone young running an auto service shop. But over time, customers discovered that our mechanics were extremely knowledgeable and our prices were fair. Then they started to trust me with their cars. From that challenge, I've built a loyal customer base.
Thank you, Jen. How about you, Todd?
I would say the biggest challenge was running a business that someone else had created. I mean, the business owner had his own ideas on how this business should be run, and I had to follow certain guidelines, even if I disagreed with them. Eventually, though, we developed a good relationship. We started to trust each other more, and now things are fine. Having a good relationship with a business owner is very important.
And we'll give the last word to Paul. What are your thoughts? Your biggest challenge?
Well, Jennifer made an important point about her customers. Finding and keeping customers is key. Without customers, you have no business. You constantly have to survey what they like and don't like to adapt your model. Otherwise, your business will collapse.
We'll have to leave it there, folks. Thanks to Paul, Jennifer, and Todd for joining us today. We appreciate your insights on the Business Roundtable. Until next week, keep working and keep earning.
Do I see any hawks?
Monica Detloff doesn't have any trouble getting her kids excited about going for a hike.
How far away?
That's because this is more than just a walk.
Oh.
It's a treasure hunt, and they get to use a GPS device, way cooler than a Game Boy.
What's this GPS say, hon?
These handheld locators, at one time used only by the military, have inspired a treasure hunting craze that is sweeping the globe.
Found it!
What Shane found is called a cache. It's the hidden treasure in the new sport of geocaching. This hunt begins at home, where geocachers find their first clues on the club's website. Next, they plug satellite coordinates of the treasure into the GPS, and then hit the trail.
Anyone can do the hiding, and the caches are hidden everywhere. So far, 250,000 hiding places in more than 200 countries.
What's inside is never very valuable. Winning is more about stamping the log sheet to prove you've conquered the challenge and found the cache, which must always be replaced for the next geocacher.
You take something, you put something else back in. She likes it.
At 18 months, Kyla is one of the youngest treasure hunters. And at 84, Shirley O'Connell is surely one of the oldest.
14.
As long as the weather's good, Shirley and Jack are on the prowl, patting down gates.
This would be a dandy place for one.
Beating the bushes, heading wherever their GPS leads them.
That's it.
They are at 1,500 finds and counting.
We hope we live long enough to get 2,000.
I like the challenge of hunting for things. It keeps you young.
And if you are young,
you get to find treasures and you get to see snakes and all kinds of animals.
Something for everyone.